So welcome everyone. My name is Holly Riebel and I'm the Executive Director of the Headwater Center and River Journey. Thank you for attending this month's virtual experience. And so thank you. I'm sure everyone's probably sick of doing these virtual programs. Hopefully soon we'll be doing them in person too as well. So first of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Headwaters Center and the River Journey. So our main mission is to actually promote and bring awareness to water conservation and ecology to the public, and so that they can learn a little bit more about where our water comes from. And we also have an event center here too, which also it's a great opportunity for, we do community events and we do weddings and other types of events. So we have a lot of things going here at the center. And when you get a chance, whenever you're in Winter Park, if you're not here already, it's to please come in and bring your family. It's a spectacular, basically a water journey experience, as we call it, to learn about the 31 exhibits that we have and really enjoy it. Again, it's a very fun, we've had over, I think, 40 people today come into the river journey so far. So please come and visit. So first of all, I want to introduce you to our wonderful speaker, which is Mary Price. She's the Executive Director for Grand County Water Information Network in Grand Lake, Colorado. And it's also named as GCWIN, is also how it's known. And Mary actually does wonderful youth science labs for us. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for kids to learn about ecology and get hands-on experience. So Mary is going to talk to us a little bit about what she does, but she served as the lead field technician for GCWIN since 2017. Water quality and environment education has been an integral part of Mary's life from a very young age, since 2, right, Mary? Growing up on an aquaculture farm in Florida, Mary formed a passion for water and all the living species that depend on its bounty. And Mary graduated with a bachelor's degree in environmental science from Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers, Florida. And having the opportunity to lead this organization has been a dream realized for Mary. And so she looks forward to working with kids and the public on everything that, how the importance of water and the health of our rivers and our precious water resources. When Mary's not on the job, she can be found enjoying Colorado's outdoors with hiking, biking, and snowboarding. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Mary start.
Awesome. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Holly. I really appreciate it. But yeah, like Holly said, I'm the Executive Director of Grand County Water Information Network, and I'm going on almost 5 years with the organization. I was the field technician before, and now I am the Executive Director. And a lot of this data that we're going to be discussing today was collected by me. So it's kind of a awesome opportunity to kind of share this data and see how it comes to real life in these graphs that I'm going to be sharing with you all. So yeah, let's dive in. All right, so here's just some photos of our GCWIN team. We not only do stream temperature, we do a lot of other monitoring. So this is a photo of our 2020 staff out on the boat. We've since had some new staff members, and we're working on getting a new picture for our website. But yeah, just to educate you guys a little bit about who GCWIN is, what's our purpose, what's our mission, and what's our history. So GCWIN's mission is to coordinate, manage, and consolidate the comprehensive water quality monitoring, information, and educational programs in Grand County, Colorado. So we have a quite important job. We do a lot. We manage a lot of data. We collect a lot of data, but we also give back to the community through education. And that's probably the funnest part of our job. A little bit about GCWIN. GCWIN was established in 2004 as a collective effort to enable better decision-making through science-based water quality monitoring, information sharing, and educational programming. So before GCWIN, there wasn't really an entity that was serving the role that we serve, which is acting as this bridge between all these other data entities to consolidate that data in one place so that it's just more accessible to all. So GCWIN really, our main theme is collaboration. We collaborate and we work with our partners to share this really, really vital data. So just wanted to give a shout out to our board of directors. Y'all might recognize some of these names, some pretty important folks in the community. Our board chair is Catherine Morris. She's the Grand County Water Quality Specialist. Our vice chair is Kurt Klinke. He's the president of the Colorado River Headwaters chapter of Trout Unlimited and an awesome contributor to the Headwaters Center as well. We have Jeffrey Neigler from Climax Molybdenum. We have Will O'Donnell from Three Lakes Watershed Association, Jen Stephenson from Northern Water, Mike Attell from the Colorado River District, Jessica Alexander from Denver Water, Bruce Hutchins from Grand County Water and Sanitation, and Doug Bellotti from the town of Granby. So as you can see from this wide variety of board members we have here, we have really amazing representation in the water quality world. So this just goes to prove, you know, how many people trust GCWIN and how many people have a stake in the game for our data and what we're doing here in Grand County. So GCWIN is a membership-based nonprofit organization. So we are a 501(c)(3) organization, and we get all of our funding from our members. And so as you can see here, there's a complete list of our members. We have so much support from the community, which is amazing. And we have a tiered structure when it comes to our membership dues. So other nonprofits such as Trout Unlimited, they pay a certain amount, and we have main contributors that pay more, who have more interest or more stake in the game for our data. So one thing I'm really proud to represent GCWIN is because we do represent and we do work with all these amazing entities, and they really support us. So it's great. All right, so what does GCWIN do? Just, you know, wanted to share with you guys, like, who are we? Because we kind of keep our heads down in the data and we're out there in the field, but, you know, I wanted to use this opportunity to educate everyone on what we do. So our main pillars are monitoring. So we have strong monitoring projects when it comes to stream temperature, conductivity, and clarity, which is our SECI program on the 3 lakes here in Grand Lake. Our other pillar is data storage. So we use the Aquam's database platform to store all of our data, historic data, data from other parties and other entities that need somewhere safe to store their data. They come to us and we store it in our Aquam's platform. So that's a large part of our job. The other part of our job is education. And so this is the part that is really fun, and we get to interact with the Headwaters Center quite a bit. And GCWIN has great historic reputation with Grand County schools, and we've been providing field trips for Grand County schools since 2009. And so every year we provide hundreds of students with hands-on watershed science. So really, really proud of that, and it's definitely the fun part of the job. All right. So throughout this presentation, you know, we're going to start jumping into the topic. If you have any questions, if you want to raise your hand, you know, physically or in the chat, please feel free to write any questions down in the chat that you have, or, you know, if it is a right time to interject with a question, definitely open to that. So let's do it. All right. So why do we monitor stream temperature, and how does it affect river health? And as you can see here, we have one of our field technicians, Ben, out there in one of our high alpine streams when it's still snowy. And yeah, it's an adventure getting to these sites sometimes. So yeah, let's jump into it. So stream temperature impacts on river health. So a lot of times what we're focusing on and what the state standards are focusing on are fish populations. And so I took this graphic from Trout Unlimited, and this is a graphic that helps educate the public on when to not fish and when the fish are feeling stressed. So, when we're talking about impacts on river health, a lot of times what we're talking about is fish populations. Like this graphic says here, the fish are stressed when the temperatures reach above 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And so when we say stress, this is kind of referring to the chronic stresses. This is, putting limitations on their growth, or, putting limitations on their reproductive abilities. So this is the region, this is the temperature range where the fish are feeling stressed. And then, as you can see, we jump to death at above 70, or at 75 degrees. And, they start to really feel that heat, and they can die. So obviously that has negative impacts on the fish. So we closely monitor that. The other impacts can be on recreation, and this is with fly fishing. Colorado, the headwaters, we are, world renowned for fly fishing. And so this is, extreme temperature can affect recreation abilities on the rivers, and that can affect small businesses and just people's overall life enjoyment up here in the mountains. So there are a variety of factors that can affect stream temperature. Just want to throw that out there. And we're going to jump into some of them, but I do want to start off by saying that GCWIN, our main role in the community and our mission is to be a data provider and a data collector. So we're not an analytical agency. We remain neutral in our data collection and our data sharing. It is not in our scope to make conclusions about our data, rather to provide quality data to the public and to the folks making the water resource decisions. So I just wanted to preface that in this presentation, we won't be giving any sort of overarching conclusions about this data, but rather to share it with the public and to urge the public that they do have access to this, and if they want to further their research, GCWIN is there to provide the data for that. So just want to throw that out there. All right, so let's talk about some of the factors that can affect stream temperature. So some of them are obvious, and some of them maybe not. So the first one is climate. So we've known climate change has been a thing for a while, and it's something that we closely keep an eye on. So stream temperature can be really affected by climate, and that's through direct sunlight. Colorado is a very sunny state. We're closer to the sun, so that direct sunlight can penetrate the water. Air temperature has an effect on stream temperature. When it's warmer, we can have warmer stream temperature as well. So that's something that affects stream temperature. Climate changes. So climate changes, we know that it affects temperature in particular. And drought. So drought, if you're not aware, Grand County is in a severe drought, and we know that drought can have effects on stream temperature. So the drought kind of goes hand in hand with the next one, which is groundwater levels. So groundwater travels and seeps through the ground and enters into our streams and has a cooling effect. But if we are in a drought and we have less cooling groundwater, we're not going to have a cooling effect from the groundwater. So that can definitely have an effect on stream temperature as well. Snowpack and precipitation. This is an obvious one. The rate of the melting snow and the timing of runoff can affect how our stream temperatures are going to look later in the summer, when the runoff is already gone and we're dealing with less volumes of water. Riparian vegetation density and health. So in areas where there isn't riparian zone, or there isn't a lot of willows and vegetation, this can have negative impacts on stream temperature as well. Willows are our friends. And lastly, water diversion. So municipal agriculture and trans-basin diversions can affect our water levels. And these are all tied together. Like all of these factors are kind of intertwined. And what we come to find is that, these are just some of the factors that we know to influence stream temperature, but environmental parameters are very complex and very deeply intertwined. So what's very exciting about stream temperature and our data is that we are getting to a point where we can look at this data in a more real way in comparison with these other factors. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so let's jump in to how does GCWIN, how we collect this stream temperature data? It's not just one single person out there collecting with the thermometer. It's a very detailed procedure that we have to ensure that our data is trusted and comprehensive. So every April, we calibrate our sensors, which you can see here in our cooler calibration tub. And we plant all these sensors into our field locations. And right now we're going on over 50 plus stream temperature locations in Grand County. So this is a big push every year. We have sites as far up as the ski resort, and we have sites all the way out past Kremling. So we really have a good comprehensive spatial coverage for stream temperature. And so every 2 weeks, we have a technician visit the sites and download and process the data. Sensors are placed in a PVC housing that allowed optimal flow through. So you can see in this picture our PVC housing. So if you've been out on the river and you've tripped over one of these, our apologies. But this is what we house our sensors in. And we put them in the thaw wag of the river, which is the deepest part.
Nothing's happening.
Oh.
No, it didn't work. Oh yeah, they're good. Hi.
Some technical difficulties. So yeah, so to continue, so we put these in these housings in the deepest part of the river so that we can ensure well-mixed water is the temperature that we're capturing. We don't want to capture, a small pool that's very shallow, that it wouldn't be representative. So we definitely work really hard on trying to ensure the placement of our housings are correct. All right, so one really cool thing about the Hobo sensors that we use is they capture temperature readings every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, all summer long, all day, all night, we're collecting stream temperature data. And this is to make sure that we have enough data and enough comprehensive coverage to ensure that our data is trusted. It's not just a one sample situation. This is full days, full nights, every 15 minutes, sometimes all year round for certain sites. So it's a lot of lines of data to go through. Every October, we retrieve the majority of our sensors and we store them in our storage because there's a lot of the rivers and the water freeze, and that's not when we're experiencing higher stream temperatures. So we don't collect data at most of our sites in the winter, so we bring them in. And then data is processed and uploaded to the database at the end of the season. So right now we're working on making our data more readily available, but as of now, we are uploading at the end of the stream temperature season. So all of our 2021 data will be available for the public in October or November. All right, so moving on. So in this presentation, I will be touching on some of these acronyms and kind of describing what they mean. So I wanted to go ahead and educate y'all on some of the Colorado stream classifications and standards. So these are the standards that the state has put in place to determine the thresholds for stream temperature. So these are the numbers and these are the classifications that we really look to, and the people who analyze our data and use our data, these are what the classifications they're using to digest that data. So you're going to see cold stream tier 1. So if the site is classified as a cold stream tier 1, This is based off the type of aquatic species that are found in that home stream. So CS1 streams are streams that have species that are sensitive to temperature. So these are our cutthroat trout. These are our native Colorado species. So these thresholds are put in place to protect those native species. These are typically small, high altitude streams. Next, we have our cold stream tier 2. This classification is based on the type of aquatic species found. So these are, not the more sensitive species, but more the more tolerant species. And CS2 are typically lower elevation streams. Not always, but for this presentation and the sites that we're going to go through, they are lower elevation streams. So next we have the watt. What is the watt? So the watt is the weekly average temperature. So when we're going through some of these graphs, you'll see that there are watt graphs and there's DM graphs. And these watt specifically are the temperature standards that are the criteria providing protection against sublethal effects on behavior, metabolism, and reproduction of the fish species. So CS1 and CS2 are going to have different watt standards. So if this is, getting too deep in the standards, my apologies. But I wanted to go through this so that when we're looking at the graphs, you understand what we're talking about. So chronic stressors are, they're not lethal. These are just stressors that are affecting reproduction, affecting growth. The fish are feeling stressed. So next we have our daily maximum. So daily maximum temperatures, they're the acute temperature criteria providing protection against lethal effects that elevated stream temperatures can cause. So the daily maximum are stream temperature standards that if we cross these for a certain amount of time, fish could die. So this is a standard that we definitely look to when we're looking at our stream temperature data. So this chart kind of outlines what those temperatures are. So for cold stream tier 1, for our, our natives, we got cutthroat trout. In the summertime, the maximum weekly rolling average is 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the daily maximum is 71 degrees. So if we go over those certain temperatures, the water providers and the people who are using this data are really taking a close eye, and they're paying attention if we're crossing these standards. So these are just some number breakdowns for you guys. And as you can see, we do have different standards for different seasons. So October through May is going to be our colder times. And so the standards are less, the temperatures are lower. So, you're going to see in the graphs below that DM and watt and how that changes throughout the season and how it compares to our data. Does anyone have any questions starting out? I know the state standards can get a little tough. Cool. All right, so now that I've given y'all a little bit of a background on, why are we looking at stream temperature? What are the impacts? What are the effects? And what are the state standards? I think it's a cool time to dive into the numbers. So we're gonna take a journey through some of GCWIN stream temperature locations. And we're going to take a close eye on 7 different sites throughout Grand County that are of interest. And we're going to look at stream temperature data from 2010 to 2020. So some of these sites we do have longer data sets for, but I wanted to just focus on the past 10 years because I think 10 years is a good amount of time to be able to see trends and to be able to take the data a little bit more seriously. So for each site, we'll be looking at the daily maximum, the weekly rolling average temperatures, the monthly averages, and then at the very end, we're going to compare all of the sites with the yearly averages. So each one of these graphs are going to kind of highlight a little bit of a different story and give us a little bit of more information on what we're looking for. So does anyone have any questions before we dive into the graphs? Cool. All right, so I wanted to take this opportunity to show you all how many sites GCWIN has. So I pulled this map from the Aquams database, which can be found on the GCWIN website. And this is just a screenshot, but we have an interactive map on our website through Aquams that shows every single one of our stream temperature locations. And you can also hover over each little droplet and you can see the location information, and you can also look at the stream temperature data from the interactive map. So if you have a home up here, or you have some property or some water rights, you can go to this map and take a look. Does GCWIN have monitoring in your area? And is there some historic stream temperature data going on near you that you may not have known? So we're really excited about the interactive map. And as you can see, we have Grand County covered in monitoring. So very exciting. So the 7 sites that we're going to focus on today are Fraser Upper, which is at the very bottom of the screen here. And this is, one of the uppermost locations on the Fraser River. So it's a great location to see that cold stream action. Next, we're going to talk about Fraser at Rendezvous. This is near the Rendezvous Bridge. If any of y'all live near Rendezvous, you're familiar with this area. We have Fraser below County Road 8 and the Hammond Ditch. We have Fraser at Highway 40 in Granby. And moving on to the Colorado, we have Colorado below Byers, Colorado at Con Richard, and Colorado at KB Ditch. So I chose these sites because I thought it gave a good representation of the county and our stream temperature. And at all 7 of these sites, we have pretty comprehensive data sets from the last 10 years. All right. So does anyone have any questions before we start getting into some of the numbers? Cool. All right, so starting with Fraser Upper. So this is one of our cold stream tier 1 sites. So this site, as you can see from the map, is located right next to the ski resort, right near the Mary Jane entrance. And this is a very beautiful site. And you can see our stream temperature rig there in the water at the site location. This is a beautiful site. I love going to the site and collecting data. It's pretty pristine. So this site we're mostly interested in because, it is a headwaters of the Fraser River. It's one of the, first locations where, the river is, coming down the valley. So this site as a cold stream 1, it should be cold. And so moving on, these graphs are pretty large. And so on the top, we have our DM, and on the bottom, we have our watt. So if you look here on the horizontal axis of these graphs, we have time. So that represents all of the years. And you can see it goes all the way back to 2010, all the way up to 2020. So these graphs are moving this direction over time. And on the vertical axis here, you can see our degrees. So on one side, we have Fahrenheit, and the other side, we have Celsius for whichever, pick your poison on that. And I just wanted to point out that this floating red line in the center of the graph, that's going to represent those state standards that we talked about in the previous slides. So if we have our graph, if we have numbers that are exceeding or going over that red line, that's when we're really paying attention. And we do have some graphs later in the presentation that do exceed those. So we'll get an opportunity to see what that looks like. But as you can see, over the past 10 years, we have a pretty comprehensive data set here. As you can see, we don't have data in the wintertime. And this is because the site typically freezes and it's not really given us we're not interested in that winter data. We're interested during the summertime when temperatures can rise. So as you can see, the DM, these are the daily maximums. So it's a little bit more of a chunkier line because there's more data here. And then the bottom graph, that's our weekly average temperatures. So this line is taking all the weekly averages from those every 15 minutes. It's creating the weekly average. And the weekly average, it's important because if we're exceeding on weekly averages, we can really see some high stress situations for the fish. This is for the same exact site, Fraser Upper, but this is a monthly mean value. So this is taking the mean of all the months over the entire course from 2010 to 2020. And this is showing all those years stacked on top of each other. So as you can see on the horizontal axis, we have the months, and the horizontal axis, we have the degrees. And so my apologies, these are only in Celsius. So we don't have that Fahrenheit comparison there. But through this graph, I really look at this graph and I try to notice, is there any yearly trends? And so I think throughout the presentation, I think 2012, which is this yellow line on top, is really going to stand out to us, because we seem to have a trend there with 2012. We do know that there was a pretty severe drought in 2012. So looking to the future after 2021, I will be curious to see how we compare to those previous drought years and be able to see if the drought is affecting our stream temperature. So it'll be neat to see. But as you can see, other than 2012, it's pretty tight here. Every year is looking about the same, which is a pretty good sign for this location. Cool. So moving on. So this is Fraser at Rendezvous. So this is just downstream of the Rendezvous Bridge in Fraser. As you can see, this is a little bit upstream of some other small stream inputs. And, this is also a very popular fishing location. So when we're choosing sites and historic sites, we're looking at all those things, spatial, is this covering, the Fraser River well? And this site is a great site because it is going to give us an idea of how fishing is there, because lots of folks like to go fishing here. So back to the graphs, same format as the last set of stream temperature graphs. We have our daily maximum on top here, and we're not seeing any exceedances at this location. This is a cold stream 2. So all of the sites now are going to be in that cold stream 2 tier. So these standards are a little bit higher. So the temperature standards can be a little higher here because of the species that are found in this particular area. So sometimes with the graphs, you can see in the daily or the watt down here on the bottom, if there is a tiny little gap missing in our little spikes here, a lot of times, sometimes we lose rigs or sometimes they get taken out of the water. And so we eliminate that data from the data set if it's if it's collecting air temperature data, we don't want that to skew our results because it could elevate our results if we're collecting air temperature instead of water temperature. So we have a pretty strict process on removing data if we believe from the notes and from field observations that it wasn't representative. So here at Fraser Rendezvous, we have the monthly mean values with all the years stacked on top of each other. And as y'all can see, the 2012 is really sticking out again. Not extreme, but there is something to note there. And I also want to point out that all of these graphs are pulled from the GCWIN database, the Aquams platform. And so part of this presentation today is to just notify the public that you can go onto our website and go into the Aquams portal, and you can create these graphs yourself. Any site location you're interested in, any weekly, daily, yearly averages that you are interested in, you can find it on that website, and you can create and generate your own visuals to help with your own research. So that's where we're trying to head with our database. We want it to be publicly accessible. So I just want to throw that out there, that all these graphs, you didn't have to be a genius to create them. I literally just pulled them from the public portal. All right, so moving on to our next site, which is Fraser below County Road 8 in the Hammond Ditch. So this is a site that's on private property. It's right downstream of the bridge at County Road 8, and it's also downstream of the confluence of St. Louis Creek and the Fraser River. So this is a site of interest because, you know, we want to see, is St. Louis Creek influencing the stream temperatures on the Fraser River? Because, you know, St. Louis Creek comes all the way up, you know, near Byers Peak. And so, you know, this is a cold water stream entering in a CS2 stream. So we look at these confluence areas to see how they affect one another. So same graphs here. As you can see between 2015 and 16, we have a pretty big data gap here. This could have been from a lost sensor. Sometimes fishermen take out the sensors thinking it's trash, and we have to eliminate that data. This is a cold stream too. So some of these peaks are getting a little closer to those red lines, but still within the state standards. This is our monthly mean values over the course of the past 10 years. As you can see, it looks like 2013 has taken a little bit of a lead on 2012 here. But as you can see that going through these graphs, you can kind of pick up on some trends, and that's an exciting aspect for me, because as we collect more data, we'll be able to look at these trends in a more real way. All right, so moving on to our last site on the Fraser River. This site, like the other sites, was established in 2005. This is a cold stream 2. And this site is located on the Fraser River in Granby, and it's downstream of the Highway 40 bridge in Kaibab Park. So if y'all are locals to the area, I'm sure you're familiar with Kaibab. But this is one of our sites that we look at because it's right before the confluence of the Colorado River and the Fraser River. This site is probably one of our oldest sites, and we monitor this one very closely, and it's a great site, has a lot of data about it. All right, so moving on to the daily maximums here, inching a little closer towards those standards. As you can see, in 2013 and 2018, we're getting close to that DM. And also in for the watt, we're peaking over that red line as well. So during our meetings, when we're presenting this data to the water providers and the stakeholders who are interested in this data, they take a hard look at when we're entering into these exceedances, and they try to adjust their operations to accommodate when we're seeing these really elevated temperatures. So that's how we use this data to help inform the water providers, and then they use the data and go from there. So it's a very important relationship that we have with our partners. So same graph here. We have our months over on the bottom, and all these beautiful lines are years. 2012 still kind of poking up at us a little bit here. So definitely something to observe. Every site has had, 2012 had pretty significant warming comparatively. So. Awesome. So now we're going to move on to the Colorado sites. But before we do, I wanted to open up the floor or offer folks a chance to take a little break if you would like. And yeah, I would just like to open up the floor if anyone has any questions or discussion regarding what we've talked about so far.
We need to get these guys a little caffeine here. Does anybody have any questions at all for Mary? Don't be shy.
This is Michelle. I do have a question.
Great.
I think you just stated it, but so the agencies that are regulators or upstream users, really the way they're affecting the water is by either damming it or offtake. Is that right? So what kind of like actions can they take if your data shows that the water's getting too hot?
So some of the actions they do take is they do environmental water releases. And GCWIN is not involved in those decisions at all. We just provide the data to help inform them so that they, because a lot of the folks making these decisions, they might be on the eastern slope, they may not be here on the ground. So, so we give them the data and then they make the choices from there. But a lot of times they will do the environmental water releases. So opening up a head gate for a couple hours to flush some water through to help elevate the volume to kind of tamper that heating down. But like I was saying, with how many factors affect stream temperature, sometimes it's not just, we could be seeing this warming not just because of a diversion or a damming, it could be from another factor altogether. So we come to these collaborative meetings, which is the Learning by Doing committee. And from that committee, we have all sorts of experts on that committee, and they kind of duke it out from there. And GCWIN, fortunately, we get to step aside from that, and we don't get an opinion at the table, but we get to provide the data. And so kind of protects us a little bit from having to get involved in the duking of the out of the decisions. But that's the role we play. So yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, is everybody, I think we'll go ahead and keep on going. Do you want to go ahead and continue?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the numbers and stuff like that can it can get a little monotonous if you're not in it like I am. So, any questions or any further explanations y'all would like, just holler. All right, so now we're getting into the Colorado River. So Colorado River, bigger river, famous river. We love this river. It's the headwaters of the entire system. So really, really valuable that we collect data on this, on these areas, because they affect so many people downstream. So this site is located off County Road 50 just downstream of the Byers Canyon. So you can see that tight topography there on this map. That's the canyon. And at this site, we're trying to observe, does the shading from this large canyon, this large geologic feature, does that have an effect on stream temperature? So some of these site locations, they haven't been picked just willy-nilly. They've been very strategically picked. This is also just upstream of Beaver Creek, which is a really awesome tributary. If you haven't had a chance to go out and visit Beaver Creek, I highly recommend it. Hundreds of beaver dams on this creek. So go out and check it out. Bring your binoculars, because there's really awesome wildlife viewing on Beaver Creek. And that's, like I said, just right upstream, right downstream of the little droplet on this map. It parallels County Road 50, Beaver Creek. So this site we do see some exceedance here on the chronic. And if y'all remember, the chronic, this is when we're seeing effects to, reproduction, to their growth, the fish are feeling stress. So we do see quite a bit of exceedances here over the years. We also see some pretty large data gaps in 2015, which is unfortunate. So yeah, this is a site of interest that we highly, keep an eye on because of its potential for warming. This site, I can note just from field experience, is shallow. So that's another thing that we take in consideration with these stream temperatures is what is the depth of the water? And this site in particular, it can get pretty shallow. And so having that shallow depth, the sun can penetrate the water. So sometimes when we're talking about reasonings behind the temperature exceedances, that's where it can get tricky. It's not just because of a diversion or global warming. It can have so many factors, and that's what we're dedicated to discovering and learning. And we're all still learning how this simple parameter of stream temperature, how it works. So that pesky 2012 coming back at us again. Definitely a drought year, has an effect on this area of the river, obviously. Have a little, not as tight here, the graph isn't as tight here. So we are seeing some variation year to year. But it's getting pretty close, all the way up to 18 degrees Celsius. So pretty high compared to, our Fraser Upper, our CS1. This, all the Colorado sites are CS2. So they do have those elevated standards to accommodate that. But it's getting warm here. All right, so moving on to this location. This is Colorado Con Richard. This is a very popular fly fishing location on the Colorado River. And we're interested in this site because people are fishing here quite a bit. We want to see how are the fish feeling here. This is a CS2 as well. And this site is located in between Hot Sulphur Springs and Kremling. So it's on that really scenic stretch of the Colorado River. So at this site, we're not seeing as many exceedances when it comes to the weekly average as we did at Byers. So sometimes when we're looking at that, we try to look on the map. This map isn't big enough, but is this site downstream of a reservoir? Williams Fork Reservoir and Willow Creek Reservoir, these reservoirs, when they have releases, they tend to have a cooling effect. So sometimes when we're looking at these sites, we're adding that into the equation as well. So this site is an exception for 2012. And it looks like 2010 is having the warmest year here. So pretty interesting. This is where I would be probably looking towards those reservoir releases or what are the tributaries near this site that could influence the stream temperature. All right, so moving on, we have Colorado KB Ditch. So this site was established in 2005. It's a CS2, and this site is located off County Road 39, just upstream of the KB Ditch. And the private landowner is Paul Boucher, and he has been a wonderful partner and an advocate for GCWIN. And he's definitely a waterman himself. So he's always gracious to let us do monitoring on his property. So this has been a super cool partnership to have. So this site, you know, it's near the KB ditch. It's upstream of that influence. So this is why we're monitoring this site. How is this ditch influencing the stream temperature, if it is at all? So this weekly rolling average, we have a pretty strong exceedance here in 2010. Definitely kind of falling in line with what we saw at the last site, Con Richard. So kind of an interesting trend there. But this site, thankfully, has stayed within those state standards. And so fishing at Paul Boucher's property should be pretty good. So kind of similar to the last graph, we are seeing 2010 kind of take the lead for warming here. So it's pretty interesting, but we also see 2010 went further all the way till November. So something to note. All right, so those were all the sites that I had to go through with you all. And so this next graph is just a full site comparison. So this graph was also pulled from Aquams, and anyone can pull this graph, anyone can create their own graph. So that's one of the major benefits that Aquams has and that we want to share with the public. So here you go. So this is yearly mean values over the course of 2010 all the way to 2020. Each different color line represents the different sites that we just went through. And so you would think that, you know, as you go downstream, further west, further south, we would see higher temperatures. And this graph is pretty much telling us that story, with the exception of Colorado below Byers. So KB Ditch, the Colorado KB Ditch site, which is our yellow line here, that is the furthest site that we've addressed. And so I just wanted to note with this slide that Grand County streams, they're highly regulated. There's a lot of releases and from reservoirs, and they're just very highly regulated. So sometimes they can be highly impacted by water diversions, reservoir releases, the ditches. So this is a great visual to prove that you know, just because we're going, you know, from upstream all the way to downstream, some of these sites may not fall in line with those trends because of the influences of reservoir releases. Is the water coming off the top of the reservoir, or is it coming from the bottom of the reservoir? That can have a major impact on stream temperature as well. So that water management side of things definitely impacts what we might see in a more natural system. And our water regulation is very regulated up here. So even more important that we monitor this and see how our human impacts and all this regulation, how is it affecting the stream temperature? And can we play with the system or can we not? So GCWIN, that's the name of our game, is collecting the data so that we can provide the data to the people who are interested in those tough questions. So I do have some conclusion slides and some other slides coming up, but I wanted to open the floor for questions about the graphs. I know this presentation was data heavy, but what questions do you have about our data?
I have a question. It's not about the data so much as just your observation, do you notice then that the collaborating organizations that acquire the data, do they end up then working a great deal together in order to start to make changes? Or, I mean, I suspect they do, having watched what learning by doing does, and, you know, but what's your observation? Because it seems, like you said, it's a highly managed environment, but whichever lever you pull could hurt somebody else unless you're all talking to each other. So I think I'm asking the talk to each other question, or the collaboration, but it's more of an observation, because I do understand what you said is you're the supplier of the information. This is just a general question about what you observe.
Right. Yeah. My observation, I've definitely been impressed with the amount of collaboration. From, you know, the old timers have told me in the past, you know, it's way better than that. Definitely, you know, Kurt Klinke is a great example. He's definitely shared the stories with me of, you know, in the even just before GCWIN's creation. So even in the early 2000s, you know, there wasn't as much collaboration as we have now. So what I've observed being a part of the Learning by Doing committee and being the field technician here, people do want to work together, and whether that's because they're being forced to through some Senate document or whatever, I have observed the willingness is there, and I think that's because the realization that the resource is so valuable in the resource needs to be clean and natural, and you know, it needs to be that way, and it's to their benefit, the water users and the agriculture folks and everyone. The better water quality we have, it benefits everyone. So I think that's kind of the driving force behind the collaboration, is that we all have the same goal, but how are we going to get there? So yeah, I think, you know, working with large groups and people with different interests has its headaches, but I've really learned a lot from my mentors, which are my board members, like Catherine Morris, for instance. Watching her and how she works in these meetings and how she conducts her collaboration, it's just a great example, and learning that we must work together to get it done is so yeah, so I only have positive
Thank you.
to say.
My dog is barking, so I have to be mute.
I see a hand raised from Stuart Milner or Minor.
Unmuted. There we go. Great. Thank you. Mary, thank you very much. You're right. It's very data heavy. And it was a little hard to really digest it as we went along. It does not look like there's any correlation between moving forward in time and higher maximum temperatures. Is that somewhat true?
Yeah, so that's moving on to my conclusion page here.
Oh,
But yeah, 10 years worth of data, you know, it is enough data to start to recognize trends. But in order to make some of those larger conclusions, you know, I would love to have more historic data. And so we do have access to that through the USGS and other agencies. And so I think to see those warming trends that, you know, they're definitely seeing further south on the Colorado River, undeniable. You know, maybe we're not seeing those, you know, maybe we have been a little bit more protected since we are such high elevation. But yeah, through the data that I've presented, you know, we aren't seeing a particular warming trend through this data set, but that doesn't mean that we won't see it in the future.
yeah.
And so, you know, climate change is something that I'm really passionate about. And, you know, I feel like GCWIN, like we are gonna, if we keep collecting data and we keep doing our thing exactly how we're doing it, 10 years, another 10 years from now, boom, we're gonna have this
Yeah.
wealth of data, and it's gonna be taken seriously. And so yeah, just because it,
That's
you know, I
great.
don't want to say that, you know, just
Mhm.
because these graphs don't indicate it doesn't mean it's not occurring.
And I'm sorry, I have one other question that's somewhat related. I was also trying to note whether or not there was a change in the point in the year when the maximum temperatures were seen. And I did notice that some years it looked like it was later in July, even coming close to August, and in other years it was earlier in July. Have you been able to see any trends in that or explain that at all? What influences when those peaks occur?
Yeah, so just from, you know, participating in the meetings and, you know, learning myself, it seems like when the other groups are talking about this sort of thing, it seems to have a correlation with the snowpack and kind of when we're seeing that peak runoff. And so if we
Yeah.
have a really, really quick peak runoff and it's gone and it's over, we didn't get a lot of volume of snow that year.
Yeah.
Now the summer's bearing down, you know, so I think there could be a, you know, a correlation between that volume of precipitation and the snowpack runoff.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, so I just wanted to note some of our conclusions, and this, you know, I have to say this part because it, you know, that's GCWIN's mission, is we are the data provider, not the analytical agency, and we remain neutral in our data collection and our data sharing. It's not on our scope to make conclusions on our data, rather provide the data to others. So just wanted to throw that out there. But some of the conclusions that I do want to share is that it is so important that data collection continues in this really comprehensive way that we are doing it. And another conclusion is data sets become more valuable with longer periods of record. So not that 10 years isn't valuable, but you know, GCWIN's worth and our value is only going to increase over time as we continue to collect these crucial data sets. So yeah, GCWIN's data is valuable. GCWIN stream temperature data will document potential shifts in temperature during times of drought and climate change. So that's kind of the driving force between us for GCWIN, is we want to document these shifts that we already predict are going to happen. But without the data, it's like, you know, you can have hypotheses and theories and passion, but the numbers from what I've observed in this industry is, you know, the numbers are what really the state and other folks who are managing these systems, they take very seriously. So if we can remain neutral and focused in our data collection, it'll take us, it'll get us to that level at which, you know, we have more data to analyze. So that's what I gotta say about that. This is just a slide on how can you get in contact with GCWIN, learn more about us. What are we doing? We also collect a lot of data on the lakes every year with historic wildfires in Grand Lake this year. I'm really excited to see what our data can produce and to provide to those partners that are interested in it. This is a picture of our office door here. We're located in Grand Lake near the old school. So feel free to pop in if you have more questions or interested or you need a database tutorial. I included a link to our Aquam's public portal. And I also have created some database tutorials online at our website through that link there that walk you through how to make these graphs. You know, there's a lot of clicking and selecting that must go down. So those tutorials are there. There's my contact information. And so, yeah, so how to get involved with GCWIN. So we are doing a lot of stuff all the time. Unfortunately, we don't get out into the public as much as I would like with, like events or stuff like that, but we definitely are involved with the education events with the children. So I would love to start providing more adult content for you guys, and this is kind of our first go at that. But to get more involved with GCWIN, you can become a member. So that's where we get all of our funding, is through members. So GCWIN, we offer individual membership starting at $100 per year. With our membership, that gives you access to more one-on-one attention when it comes to the database. Say you're a person you want to do a research project, boom, you're going to have a little bit more attention from us with our database, even though it is publicly accessible. You can donate to GCWIN. This work takes a lot of money, and we always need funding to help ensure that we can remain neutral and we can also provide quality work. So if we were bought out by one agency, well, that loses our neutrality. So by having a diverse set of members and funders, we can remain neutral. And so, yes, we really need donations, and we would love to get more donations so we can buy more equipment, hire more field staff, collect more data, and expand our database so it is more user-friendly. So that's my donation pitch. We also have volunteer opportunities through the Headwaters Center. We do education events once a month, and we also do education events with the schools every year. So if you can imagine, putting on a field trip for hundreds of kids requires quite a bit of help. So, if anyone or if you're interested, we're always looking for volunteers. We also have some volunteer opportunities when it comes to data collection. We've moved more towards employees so we can have that more confidence in that data. But we do have opportunities for volunteers to get into the field and to see the beauties of field work here on our amazing rivers. So if you're interested in that, my contact information is on the previous slide. And yeah, so just to follow up, here's some resources and some sources for this presentation for you guys to look at if you want to. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation, and just want to thank you all for sticking with and open up the floor for questions.
Any questions, anyone? I think I see you. Nope, I don't think so. Thank you, Mary. You did a wonderful job, and we really appreciate all the work you do. Again, great data leads to great knowledge, which leads to great decisions. So again, I really appreciate everything you do, and we love having GCWIN as a partner. If you want to register for any of our classes too, and get those kiddos, learn more about ecology, then you can go to headwatersriverjourney.com, and you can go to our events page and our calendar and register for any of the her programs or any of the programs that we hold over here at the Headwaters River Journey and the Center. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate for you listening in. And this is being recorded, so if you give us a couple of days, you can actually go to our website, and we will have a recording of this presentation in case you didn't get some of this great information or some of these sources that you didn't jot it all down. So thank you so much. And again, I appreciate everyone's time. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.